You've probably lain awake at least once wondering the very thing I did before we packed up. What actually happens if you need a doctor over here in Australia? And will the whole health question put your mind at ease or keep you tossing all night? But before I get into all of it, it would really mean a lot if you'd subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It genuinely helps us out over here. That's exactly what we're settling today, right here from my porch on the Sunshine Coast. The Pacific's just over my shoulder, that salty breeze coming up off the water, and if you'd caught me at dawn, you'd have heard the cockatoos screeching in the gum trees loud enough to wake the whole street. 4 years I've been sitting here, and I still can't quite believe how easy the thing I feared most turned out to be. Let me pick you up right where I was, though, because I remember the worry. Back in Ohio, the winters dragged on gray and long. Bare trees, salt on the roads, that sky the color of an old nickel for months on end. And every so often an envelope would land on the kitchen table. You know the kind. The ones from the hospital or the insurance folks. I'd feel this little knot pull tight in my stomach before I even opened it. Sometimes it was fine, sometimes it wasn't, but the knot showed up every single time. So when we started talking seriously about Australia, that was the fear that sat heaviest on me. Not the flights, not the packing, the health question, the quiet one you carry around at 3 in the morning. If I move this far from home, am I gambling with my own health? What if something goes wrong out there on the other side of the world and I don't know the first thing about how it all works? I hear that same worry from a lot of you, and I want you to know I felt it too. Is it really a gamble with your health to move this far from home? No, folks, and it isn't. Let me show you why. Here's the calm truth, and I'll give it to you straight because I wish somebody had given it to me. The care down here has been first rate from day one, not eventually, not once we figured it out, from the very first week. And I don't say that to sell you a dream, I say it because I've lived it now, 4 years running. Let me give you something concrete. In our little coastal town, there's a clinic run by a doctor named Sarah. First time I went in, I braced myself the way you do back home. Clock ticking, one hand on the door, 7 minutes, and you're out. That's not how it went. Dr. Sarah sat back in her chair and actually asked me how I was settling in, asked about the move. Then she took her time going over everything, no rushing, no glancing at the clock. I walked out of that first appointment thinking, well now, that's different. And it's been that way ever since. She knows my name. She remembers what we talked about last time. That alone loosened something in my chest I'd been carrying for years. Then there was the hospital. About a year in, I had to head up to the hospital in Nambour, just up the road from us. Nothing dramatic, a scan and a check. I'll be honest, my American brain was expecting a factory. Fluorescent lights, a long, cold hallway, a number instead of a name. Instead, it felt more like a well-run country inn. Calm, clean, people who looked you in the eye and had a minute to talk. A nurse brought me a cup of tea while I waited, and that's a good thing. Now, I'm not a doctor and I'm not selling you anything fancy. I'm just a fellow from Ohio who's now sat through 4 years of it. The doctor's visits, the visa renewals, the afternoons comparing plans at the kitchen table, and watching a good friend of mine go through a real hospital stay and come out the other side. Somewhere in all that, you learn which questions actually matter and which ones you were losing sleep over for no reason at all. That's the whole reason I want to point you to something. When I was sorting my own coverage out, I ended up gathering every one of those lessons into one place, a step-by-step walkthrough called OnewayGuide, over at onewaywithjim.sj-office.eu. It's the doctors, the hospitals, Medicare versus private, the retiree forms, and the filing help, all laid out the honest way, no hard sell. Think of it as the homework already done for you, so that big coverage question doesn't sit on your chest the way it sat on mine. I'll come back to how it all works. But the short version is, the answer's a lot simpler than the worry makes it look, because here's where most folks tie themselves in knots. It's not the doctors. It never was the doctors. The doctors, as I've told you, put me at ease fast. It's the coverage. It's that one word, Medicare, sitting next to those 2 words, private plan, and you staring at them wondering which is which and what on earth you're supposed to do. That's the mountain everybody sees from a distance. And I'll let you in on something now. Up close, it's a whole lot smaller than it looks from Ohio. So if that little knot in your stomach shows up every time a medical bill lands, stay right here with me because that feeling is exactly what we're about to put to rest. I had a buddy back home, fellow named Frank, who worried about this harder than anyone I know. And the funny thing is, so did I. The one thing that nearly froze me and nearly froze Frank right along with me wasn't the doctors at all. It was that single question sitting there like a locked door: Medicare or a private plan, and how do I know I won't pick wrong and end up exposed? Next, I'll sit you down, right here, and show you exactly how I answered it, in one calm afternoon, with a coffee. So let me sit you right down here and do exactly that. Pour yourself something warm first, because the shape of this decision is a lot plainer than the worry makes it look. Here's the real shape of it. As guests in this country, we sort out our own health cover. That's just part of the deal, and honestly, it's a fair one. Medicare, the public system, covers the essentials. Your doctor visits, the hospital when you truly need it, the bread and butter of staying well. Then on top of that, you weigh a private plan for the extras. And by extras, I mean the things that make life comfortable. The dental work, the shorter waits when something needs doing, a private room with a window instead of a shared ward. That's the whole choice, really. Medicare underneath, and a private plan sitting on top for the comforts. Now, does weighing Medicare against a private plan really have to feel like a mountain? I promise you, it doesn't. Let me show you. Because that word, mountain, is exactly how it felt in my head before I actually did it. It sounds like a mountain. It isn't. It's homework, a small assignment, the kind you do once, over a single afternoon, and then you're done with it for years. That's all. I've built porch steps that took longer than sorting out my health cover did. Here's how it actually went for me. One quiet afternoon, 4 years back, I took a coffee out to the wooden table on the porch. Same table I'm sitting at now. I got myself a single sheet of paper and a pen, and I compared 2 or 3 plans in one afternoon with a coffee, laid out side by side, the exact same way you'd size up 2 porch chairs before you buy the one you're going to sit in for the next 10 years. Unhurried, no stress. Cockatoos carrying on in the gum trees behind me. Just a man, a coffee, and a list. And that list is the whole trick. Grab a pen and a coffee wherever you are. This is the exact little list I sat down and wrote out, and it's the one that put my mind at ease. First question, what's actually covered? Read it plain. What does Medicare take care of on its own? And what am I reaching for the private plan to add? Second, what do the weights look like? For the routine stuff, how long am I sitting on a list before something gets done? Third, what do the extras really cost me each month? The dental, the physio, that private room if the day ever comes, and the last one, the one that matters most. What actually feels like peace of mind for the way I live out here at my age with my knees and my history? That last question is the quiet one, but it's the one that does all the work. Because coverage isn't really about the paper, it's about how you sleep at night. Which brings me back to my buddy Frank. Now Frank, a good friend of mine from back home in Ohio, he moved out a couple of years after we did, and he tied himself in absolute knots over this exact decision. He kept fretting he'd pick wrong, that he'd sign the papers, feel good about it, and then find out the hard way the day he needed it, that he'd left himself exposed. And I'll be straight with you because I promised you honesty. That same worry is what nearly froze me too. That knot in the stomach I used to get back in Ohio every time a medical bill landed in the mailbox. I could feel it creeping back in as I stared at those brochures. The fear that you'll get one box wrong and pay for it later. I know that fear. I sat with it on this very porch. But here's what happens when you actually do the afternoon. The knot loosens. One question at a time. The fog burns off. And the thing that felt like a gamble starts to feel like a decision. A plain, sensible decision you're fully capable of making. By the time I'd worked down my little sheet, I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew what Medicare had me covered for. I knew exactly what my private plan added and what it cost. And that feeling, that quiet confidence of knowing you're covered, knowing the paper behind you is solid, there's nothing like it. No, not. Just a clear morning and a coffee that tastes better because you're not worrying while you drink it. Now, I mentioned earlier that little step-by-step guide that helped me, And I'm not going to make a big song and dance about it again. I'll just say this plainly because it's true. What turned my scattered questions into that one clean sheet was the checklist inside OnewayGuide. It's where I got the right questions in the right order, so I wasn't sitting there wondering what I'd forgotten to ask. The homework already laid out for you. That's all. Back to the porch because I want you to really feel where this leaves you. Picture it. The afternoon's done, the coffee cup's empty, the sheets got check marks down the side. You lean back in your chair, the salty breeze coming up off the Pacific, and you realize the thing that had you lying awake is just handled, settled, one less shadow in the back of your mind. That's what solid coverage feels like once it's in place. Not a triumph, just a quiet, steady ease. And if a part of you is nodding along right now because that same worry, picking wrong and ending up exposed, is exactly what's been holding you back, then stay right here with me. Because the next part is where you see how it actually pays off, where the paper stops being paper. Because here's the honest thing about all that homework. It stays theory. It's just check marks on a sheet, a nice feeling on a Tuesday afternoon, right up until the day life reaches out and tests it. You don't truly know what your coverage is worth on the calm days. You find out on the hard one, the day you, or somebody you love, actually needs that hospital bed, not as a what if, for real. And last year it got tested. Hard. Frank, the very fellow who'd fretted the most about picking wrong and ending up exposed, landed in the hospital with a bad gallbladder. I got the call, grabbed my keys, and drove over expecting to find him rattled, braced for a shaken man and a stressful bill sitting on the tray table beside him. What I found instead is the whole reason I'm telling you any of this. I pulled into that hospital car park in Nambour with my shoulders up around my ears. Honestly, I'd rehearsed the whole thing in my head on the drive over, how I'd find Frank pale and worn out, how I'd sit by the bed and try to talk him down while he stewed over what this was all going to cost him. That's the picture I walked in with, and it could not have been more wrong. And if you've ever pictured yourself in that hospital bed, far from home, dreading the bill, I want you to watch closely what actually happened to Frank, because when I came around that corner, there he was, sitting up, pillows plumped behind him, a cup of tea on the little table, and this grin on his face like he'd just told a good one, which, knowing Frank, he probably had. A nurse was there tucking a blanket over his feet, and he was giving her a hard time about the hospital food, and she was giving it right back, the two of them laughing. This was a man who, a week earlier, had a bad gallbladder and a face full of worry. Now he looked like he was holding court at a barbecue. I just stood in the doorway a second, took it in. He waved me over, told me all about it, how they'd sorted him quick, how the surgeon had explained every step in plain words, how the nurses on that ward had fussed over him like he was family. He kept saying it. They fussed over me, Jim, little things. A fresh jug of water before he even asked. Someone popping in through the night just to check he was comfortable. He wasn't a case number in there, he was a person, and they treated him like one. And then he said the thing I'll never forget. He told me, and I'm quoting him near enough, that in all those days in that bed, the one thing he never once thought about was money. Not once, because he'd done his homework. He'd sorted his cover before he ever needed it. And so not one stressful bill followed him home. Think about that. The very man who nearly talked himself out of the whole move because he was so afraid of picking the wrong plan and ending up exposed, he sailed through the scariest week of his 4 years here without a single knot in his stomach over a bill. That's the fear we started with, isn't it? That little clench you get when the envelope lands in the mailbox back home. Frank went through the exact thing every one of us quietly dreads. A real hospital stay, surgery, the works. And it never touched him that way. His mailbox at home stayed just a mailbox. No dreaded letter. No cold sweat over a number with too many zeros on it. And a few days later, he walked out of that hospital on his own 2 feet, small bag in one hand, still smiling. He walked out still smiling about the whole thing, telling me the nurses had made him promise to come back and say hello. Who does that? Who leaves a hospital planning to visit? Frank did. Because it had been, of all things, a good experience. I drove him home that afternoon, windows down, that salty breeze off the Pacific coming in warm, and somewhere along that coast road it hit me all over again. A little preparation up front buys you years of quiet confidence. That's the whole thing right there. Frank didn't get lucky. He got ready. One calm afternoon, months before, sitting down and doing the homework, and it paid him back tenfold on the week it counted most. So let me ask you plainly, after a story like that, does the doctor out here still sound like something to fear? I don't think it does either, because here's what I've watched happen, in Frank and in myself, and in more than a few friends since. The doctors here go from being the scariest unknown on your list to being one of the quiet reasons you're glad you came. That's a real turn. When you're back home lying awake, healthcare is the big black question mark hanging over the whole dream. What if I get sick over there? What if it costs me everything? And then you get here, you do that one afternoon of homework, and the thing flips right over. The doctors become one less thing to fear and one more reason to come. That's not me selling you anything. That's just what 4 years on this porch has shown me, plain as the day. So picture it now, really picture it, not the worry, the reality on the other side of it. It's early morning on the Sunshine Coast. You're up before most folks, the way you tend to be at our age. The cockatoos are screeching at dawn up in the gum trees, that racket you come to love. There's the smell of eucalyptus still hanging in the air from the rain overnight. You walk down toward the water with your coffee, and the salty breeze off the Pacific comes up to meet you, and the surf's rolling in slow and steady. And here's the part that changes everything about that morning. You're completely at ease, not a knot anywhere in you, because you know, sitting quiet in the back of your mind, that you're covered. That if the day ever comes when you need a doctor, there's a Sarah in a clinic somewhere who'll take her time with you, and a hospital that'll treat you like family, and no Bill waiting to ambush you at home. That's the morning I want for you. That's the chapter that's sitting right there, waiting. And yes, I'll say it straight, the way I always do. It's a big step. Pulling up roots in your 60s and crossing an ocean is no small thing, and I'd never pretend it is, but look at what actually stands between you and that morning by the water. It isn't some mountain of impossible paperwork. It's one calm afternoon, one coffee, one list of questions, a couple of plans compared side by side like porch chairs, and the homework's done. That's it. Once you've done that, this whole new chapter just opens up in front of you. The sun, the sea, the friendly faces, and the good doctors you never have to lie awake worrying about. Frank's proof of that. He's out there right now healthy as a horse, still telling that gallbladder story to anyone who'll sit still long enough. And every time he tells it, someone else stops being afraid. So here's my warm word to you, from this porch to wherever you're sitting. Take your time with this. There's no rush and no wrong pace. You plan it the way it suits you. Don't stress yourself out over the parts that feel big from a distance. They get small the moment you actually walk up to them, and go into this new chapter with a little excitement because you've earned it. It's doable. I'm living proof. Frank's living proof. And you can be too. And I promise you, it is so worth it. If these porch chats help you picture your own Australian chapter, come along for the ride. It genuinely means a lot over here. Pour yourself another coffee, keep dreaming it real, and I'll see you next time from right here under this wide, warm sky.